It's no coincidence that you're watching this video right now. God has some truths He wants to reveal to you, and through watching and receiving and hearing His voice, He will transform every part of your life. While we're speaking about this whole authority thing, let's just flip over here real quick to 1 Peter chapter 5. And I want to read something from there. Now, many people ask this question, what is an elder? And I'm going to touch on this right now, of course, in 1 Peter chapter 5. But there's something in 1 Peter 5 that I want to bring to your attention, because many people believe that an elder is somebody on the church board. Incorrect answer. That's a deacon. Many people believe that an elder is a pastor. That is a partially correct answer, but that is also not a totally correct answer. And I'm going to show it to you in a second, and I'm going to tell you why that is a partially correct answer. Amen. Let's drive that devil out of my throat. I don't know where that came from. Chapter 5 and verse 1. Haven't coughed in 3 days. And then suddenly this thing is like scratching me. Chapter 5 and verse 1. Therefore I strongly urge the elders among you. Now I know the meaning, the Greek meaning is pastor. But there's something I want you to pay attention to here. And then we're going to go to the Old Testament, and I will explain it from the Old Testament, so that you understand what an elder is. Now, in the Old Testament, an elder was a father. An elder was a father, not like a father with a wife and children, but a father as in somebody that leads or guides. But the Bible also teaches that a father is, or a man is the head of the house. So an elder is what? A head of a house. So even though it means pastor in the Greek, if you read the bigger meaning, it means he's a head of the house. But in 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 1, if you read the full context, there's something real interesting. Let's get to it. I urge the elders among you, as a fellow elder, as a what? As a what? Who wrote this book? Peter, thank you. Was Peter ever a pastor? No, he was not a pastor. James was a pastor. Peter was an apostle and a prophet. And when he wrote to Timothy, he says, do the work of an evangelist. So you could say that he touched on that office as well of evangelism, at least to one degree or the other. But here's the point. He was not a pastor. So what is he saying? Of whom I am one. What does this word mean? He is a leader, a ruler over a house. Does it mean he was a pastor? No. Could it mean that an elder could be a pastor? Yes, because it's a part of the fivefold ministry, or a part of the 5 offices of ministry. But it could mean something else as well. But what it definitely means, it's a ruler in a house, right? In other words, a church. As a fellow elder and as an eyewitness as a fellow elder and as an eyewitness. Now, for those of you that don't know this, the 12 apostles were also called the 12 apostles of the Lamb because they were eyewitnesses of His crucifixion and His resurrection. So when they say we're an eyewitness, what the implication is, they're apostles of the Lamb. The one of 12 that was and will never be. That's why he speaks about the 12 foundation stones, because they were the 12 apostles of the Lamb. But let's go on. And then he says, verse 2, feed the flock of God, which is among you, taking the oversight. See how he says oversight? In other words, An elder is somebody that has oversight. They are over the house to guard over the house. Then he says, not by constraint, but willingly, not with filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. Now you'll see this kind of language as we go on. Neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, you shall receive a crown of glory that fades not away. Likewise, I'm going to read this from the Amplified in verse 5. Likewise, you younger men, be subject to your elders. Now, elders there doesn't mean older people. It means those that are in charge over the house. So, somebody that's in an office that is in charge over a house. Does that make sense? And all of you, clothe yourself with humility towards one another, for God is opposed to the proud, but He gives what? Grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, so that He may exalt you at the appropriate time, casting all your cares on Him, for He cares for you, or He cares about you with deepest affection and watches over you very carefully. Now, I want you to see this, is that the purpose of the elder was the order. He's in charge over, and there's people under him. Because Paul just said, hey, you've got to submit. That word submit there means to receive. That's what that word means. Submit means you go under. Receiving means, if I receive you, it means I grant that I agree and I acknowledge that you are an authority. That you're a man of authority who's under authority. That's what that means. In other words, I receive what you have to offer unto me. Comment down below what God just revealed to you. Share this video with somebody that is in need to hear it, as God is sharing with you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us. You understand? So submitting there doesn't mean you have no say. Submitting also doesn't mean, like he said earlier in a few verses back, lording over the people. That's not what that is. But what it is it is a submitting, which means receiving. So back to the same principle as the wedding feast in Matthew 14. What am I doing? I'm receiving. I'm a receiver. Now, why is that true? Because so in Ephesians chapter 4, the Bible says, he speaks about the fivefold ministry, apostles, prophets, teachers, evangelists, and pastors. And he says this. And then he goes on, I believe it's around verse 23. I might have the verse wrong, but it's around there somewhere. He says this. He says, for the full equipping of the saints, until we all come to the unity of the faith. In other words, so that we can be all raised to the same level of faith. Remember what I explained to you in the beginning. Your authority is your level of authority is subject to what? Your level of faith. So what is the purpose of the elders or the officers? To raise people's level of faith up so that they have a level of authority. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are in an office. Somebody can walk in the same level of faith and authority that I have if they've been raised up to that level of faith. But that doesn't mean they're in that office. The word office means, and I've said this in the past, but the office there means the same thing as it means in the world. If I'm a medical doctor, right, but I'm not practicing it as a medical doctor. If I have a degree to be a medical doctor, but I'm a farmer, like my dad has a law degree, but he's a farmer now, he used to be, but now he's a businessman. Does everybody greet him as lawyer? No. They recognize him as businessman. Why? Because what is he in? In business. Do you follow what I'm saying? So people say, well, no. If you're doing the work of an evangelist, People's like, yeah, but Timothy, he wasn't an evangelist. He only did the work of an evangelist. No, I want to help you. If you're a carpenter, it means you're doing the work of a carpenter. If you're a carpenter, but you do the work of a bricklayer, you ain't a carpenter. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, that's just common sense. Right? So if you do the work of something, that is what you're doing. See, the thing is that many people, because of some of these teachings in the church, they think, well, if I've got the gift of healing on my life, and I get 5 lost people saved and filled with the Spirit, I'm an evangelist. Well, first question you should ask yourself is, are you doing the work? Because before the office comes the work of. You understand what I'm saying? So in 1 Timothy, when it says, well, do the work of an evangelist. Well, what does that mean? That means before you in the office of an evangelist, you do the work of an evangelist. So unless you're doing the work of an evangelist, you're not an evangelist. Many people think because they've got the ability of an evangelist, they're an evangelist. No. You might have the gifting of an evangelist, but that doesn't mean you have the office of evangelist. And I'll elaborate on it for 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to carry on. But here's the deal. As much as I had to learn how to rule over certain things in my life, in my sphere of influence, if you want to have, see, many people get into the gifting of an evangelist. So they're in that gifting, that range of gifting. And they have those spiritual gifts operating in their lives. But to be an evangelist full-time, and the money keeps coming in, so you can keep supporting your family, number one, and number two, you keep reaching enough people to make that possible over the next 10 years. That requires a different set of faithfulness than just having the gift, getting the sick healed, and 5 lost people saved. Because suddenly, you need administration skills. And suddenly, you need faithful finances. Well, I thought that belonged to Kenneth E. Hagin and a few other prosperity preachers. Well, no, guess what? If you want to do full-time ministry, you need faithful finances. Do you follow what I'm saying? So people don't get that. And so sometimes it's easier being a part-time evangelist than having a full-time job and doing that, on the sideline, because you need less faith. Your level of faith is not the same as the guy doing it full-time. I wasn't that stupid when I said, God, I don't want to be doing this full-time, because I know exactly what it required. Do you follow what I'm getting at? Your level of faith is not the same level of faith. You understand what I'm saying? And so therefore, you're not quite in that office. You might have the gifting, but the office might be something else. So in other words, your total true level of authority is not quite the same. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean you won't get there. It doesn't mean you can't be equipped to get there. It doesn't mean you're not called to be that. It doesn't mean you're not on your road getting there. But it's a different thing altogether saying, you are.